Thank you very much. Welcome to our panel on Internet of Things, implications to marketing, sales, post-sales, and services. Thanks for your attending and interest. So to get started today, I'd like to introduce myself. I am what's known as a senior technical staff member of IBM. I'm responsible for mobile customer engagement as well as technical strategy. So my technical team ensures that we are building software and services in a way that builds broad adoption within commerce, as well as IBM at large, but also ensuring that our strategy aligns with broader technology trends as identified by our own experts, the market, and our partners. And the Internet of Things is one of the areas of strategic technical importance for the commerce organization. So today we have an action-packed agenda for you. We hope to leave you with an impression of the importance of IoT in your engagement and analytics strategy. And we're going to talk through some tangible use cases employed today by customers and our partners. So we have a few slides. I'm going to set the stage today. We're going to introduce the panel. And we've prepared a handful of questions that we'll address with the panel. But we are interruptible. So please, if there's any clarification that we need to make, raise your hand and speak up, and we'll address those. The panelists will be available after the session to address additional concerns. And if there's any additional questions, our organizer is Ryan Begley. His contact information up on the screen. And he'll also be able to schedule any additional follow-up sessions with our team. So really, what I wanted to do to start off with is to really assess, by a show of hands, how many of you have already started a project in your organizations incorporating IoT devices. And how many are planning on starting one this year, or plans to initiate a prototype? And anyone have anything in production right now and actively using IoT in your engagement facilities whatsoever? Okay. So I think you've come to the right place. Our expert panel here will provide some great insight to help kickstart your own ideas. So what I'd like to do is introduce them now. And what I'd like to do is start with Scott. And Scott, would you be able to tell us a bit about yourself and your position in IoT?
Sure, absolutely. I always like to make it a little bit comical since these conferences are so dry. I was at the Global IoT conference last week speaking, and the conference chair asked me, Scott, you've accomplished so much and you're only 25. I said, I'm a little bit older than that. And he said, you're 26, actually times 2. I'm a little bit older than I actually look, but I'm very excited to be here. My main profession is that I'm a pontificator, but I write for Wired, IE, and a number of other publications. In addition to that, I also speak at global conferences on the leading technology that's emerging within the IoT and wearable space in particular. So tomorrow, Reddit and I will be at the IoT Worlds. I will be speaking on open source in particular. So we're very excited about this, and we think that there is a clear intersection between IoT and campaign management. So that's what it's my thought here.
Hi, I'm a founder at Ort, a European company which provides a complete technology to let manufacturers to turn their products into connected ones. We provide everything from radio chipsets through cloud software to mobile apps. And we learned a lot about their needs, and we know a lot about their strategies and goals, which are highly connected with engagement, with big data analytics, and I'd like to share my knowledge with you today.
Thank you. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Segat-DeLuca. I am an omni-channel tech strategist at IBM. IBM Commerce Division under Michael Bordash. I'm also the most prolific female inventor at IBM. So I'm always looking for cool ways to integrate technology with anything that I do in my day job. So commerce is right now our big focus for our organization. But of course, IoT is a huge player in what we're doing, as well as any social, Twitter and Facebook, as well as any of the top new technologies that you're all playing with, maybe outside of work or in work. So I'm excited to join the panel today.
And Tim Francis.
And hi, my name is Tim Francis. So Scott jokes that he's maybe mistaken to be 25 years. I actually been with IBM for exactly 25 years now. So I've for a long time, doing everything from compiler development, miscellaneous pieces that we have within IBM. And I'm currently a distinguished engineer and driving a bunch of the technical strategy that we have within the commerce unit. So I've been working since we formed the commerce unit about 5 years ago now, since we started out, what many of you may recall was what we were calling at the time as the Smarter Commerce Initiative. And so just looking at trying to pull together a bunch of the products that we have, which is both legacy IBM and then a lot of the new acquisitions, and trying to make sure that we can lead to the right direction with that. And so clearly, topics such as Internet of Things and the capability we're going to be talking about in this panel is very relevant to all of that.
Great, thank you everyone for joining us today. So I'd like to set the stage for today's panel by covering a few topics. I promise just 2 slides, no death by PowerPoint, I promise. I'd like to start with scale. I believe we're at the precipice of one of the largest disruptors to business in recent history. Utilization of IoT data will eventually affect almost everyone on Earth. IDC research predicts this tectonic shift will generate nearly $6.2 trillion in annual sales by 2025. By contrast, the total total revenue of the consumer electronics industry in 2013 was only about $1.1 trillion. The number of connected devices could reach 1 trillion within the next decade. By contrast, the total number of mobile devices has just exceeded 7.2 billion in 2014. The number of IoT devices reporting human behaviors could eventually eclipse the total human population by a factor of 10 to 1. And let's talk about the competition. How does competition feel about IoT? And we see several strategies emerging at this point. Number 1, Amazon's introduction of the dash button and acquisition of telemetry. Number 2, the recent announcement of Jasper's partnership with both SAP and Salesforce.com. Both Samsung and GE announced sizable investments in IoT in the number of hundreds of millions of dollars. And recently, Microsoft unveiled its IoT suite for Azure. And lastly, IBM, number 5, last but not least, you may have heard that IBM has committed $3 billion to form a new business unit focused on IoT. And in fact, developers today are already starting to craft solutions in the cloud in Amyx using Node-RED. And then when we look at the evolution of the brand-consumer relationship, IoT is clearly the logical next step. Prior to the internet, brands relied on broadcast mode and relied on market research to tune messaging well after the fact. The internet brought a voice to the customer and created the concept of real-time actionable data. And finally, with IoT, we gave devices a voice, and the dawn of C2B, as you may have heard Deepak this morning, consumer to business, customer to business. Whether it's your smart coffee maker, your smart car, or your smartphone, IoT is transforming how we create value for consumers, how companies compete with each other, and how each one of us live our lives through the unflinching lens of data. So let's turn it to our experts here to guide us in terms of what we do next. So Scott, there's a lot of talk about how IoT will usher in a new era of advertising. And you've spoken quite a lot about IoT and campaign management engagement. Could you elaborate a bit on this for us?
Sure, absolutely. If you could transition to the PowerPoint, would be great. So I gave a talk in Shanghai last fall around this topic, and it was interesting to see how, at that point, the market was not quite ready in terms of awareness. The topic I'm going to cover is actually a facet of artificial intelligence called effective computing, or neuroscience. And its ability for machines and systems to be able to decipher, detect, and classify your human emotions. And how does that relate to IoT? Well, IoT has many facets. The way I look at it is it's really concentric sets of circles around our body area network, our home area network, to the wireless sensor networks. Its ability to be able to communicate with one another. Now, one of the things that makes us humans very interesting and sometimes difficult to sell to from an acquisition and a retargeting is that we're somewhat unpredictable. There's a certain aspect of us that's rational, but because we're sentient beings, we by nature perceive and interpret things differently. And what you're seeing here is a chart of some of the primary emotions and some of the advanced emotions of humans, which basically simplifies the point that we're very complex beings. And so from a messaging point of view, from a brand engagement life cycle, it's not exact science. It's tricky. So let's transition. One of the things that IoT, including a subset, which is the wearables, brings is this notion of capabilities around HCI that allows for detection capabilities. So on the top right, you have the physiological sensors. So most of you probably have either looked into or have recently purchased an Apple Watch or something equivalent. These wearable capabilities have very interesting sensors. And so, for example, some of these sensors are being licensed by Israeli companies that I'm aware of, as well as some are homegrown. But it does a wide range of things, from being able to detect your heart rate variability, your blood pressure, your blood volume pulse, your breathing rate, to even differences in the various things that's within your chemistry level. And we're going to see a lot more of that. Now, the sensor capabilities that are in the market are fairly early, but what I see is usually a year to 24 months ahead, and I can tell you that there's exciting things coming up, including the ability to be able to actually detect heart attack and stroke in advance of the actual event. And as you move across to the EEG, though it's somewhat academic in terms of things like the emotive epoch and epoch plus, we're starting to see that there are other transformation in form factor that's going to make it allow for consumers to actually proceed and consume some of these things. Now, the exciting thing about EEG is that it's one of those things where it seems somewhat kind of strange for us consumers and practitioners. But the reality is this, along with natural language processing, are going to be the future interfaces in terms of how we actually work symbiotically with each other, but also with our computing agents. Facial recognition. So FACS, which is a methodology that's fairly prevalent, that's out there already, uses camera vision to be able to decipher your human emotions based on the movements of a cluster or a collection of your muscles on your face. And this is one of probably the more precise sets of capabilities for motion detection, in addition to some of the other modalities. And we're starting to see a lot more of this in the context of everything from customer service engagement to even retail engagement, and the ability to be able to actually know, in fact, what you're delivering is on target. And I'll talk about some of the use cases. Eye movements, interstitial speech, and another category we call neurochemicals and neurotransmitters are not there. These are a little bit more advanced, some of which may not be necessarily within reach in the near term, but certainly around the speech emotion with beyond verbal, for instance, there is a lot of capability that not only basically decipher what you're saying, but be able to actually analyze your pitch, your rates, your frequency, various ranges around that, to be able to actually know what's happening. Now, what's the sum of this slide is that about a century ago or so, we had the creation of something called the polygraph. Polygraph was a very crude mechanism for determining if, in fact, what you were saying was truthful or not. We've come a long way, and the collectiveness of wearables, along with the IoT, including environmental, is going to be able to allow for us to be able to actually gauge with pretty reasonable precision around how you're actually responding to everything from messaging, promotions, to campaigns. And I think that's a really exciting point. So we can go ahead and transition. So I'm just going to walk you through a customer journey map here. So as most of you are probably practitioners in this space, you guys are very used to doing omni-channel campaigns. So let's take the example of Louis Vuitton as an example, where there is a specific set of collection or campaign that you want to push out, which is then distributed via newsletter, webinar, or email campaigns, or perhaps maybe even social media, as in the case of Twitter or Periscope and Meerkat. That's going to then bring them into the actual store. I'm going to transition there. One of the things that's really interesting, and take this in the context of, let's say, a shopping mall. For instance, we're actually working with a shopping mall where they're actually looking to us to be able to decipher how people respond to certain leasehold improvements, including facades or signage and so forth. So even before you walk in, we can actually determine what the emotional reaction of that signage, or perhaps the even visual merchandising or display, in this case, the storefront. Okay. Once you walk in, most of us, we as humans, probably make a decision quickly, actually, within the first instant, a second as we walk into a store. There's an immediate response in terms of how we feel about that ambience, or that leasehold improvement, or the decor. Well, we can actually capture that as well. And again, one of the things I'm going to point out is we're going to actually dedicate a whole section around privacy. So I'll talk about how we're going to address all of these things. But from a capability-wise, we're actually able to do this from the point that you walk in. And that will actually help inform whether what you're doing in terms of ambience is in fact on par. Okay. Now, as a consumer, browse through the merchandising across the different product categories and identify a particular piece, in this case a bag. There's a reaction to it. So here again, we could be using everything from gimbal beacons, we could be using Wi-Fi and other capabilities that are environmental in nature that could trigger your geofence, but also in addition to being able to utilize the facial recognition, speech, and other modalities I showed you in previous slides to be able to actually decipher that, oh, this person is having a really favorability or a strong positive response to this particular product. Well, what you've done is in your campaign management system, you've actually put in some rules there, some logic that if this person, if a consumer trips a particular area and we're able to identify what product that was and they show highly positive favorability, we're going to actually trigger a message. In this case, it's saying, hey, do you like this product? It seems like you're really loving this thing. If so, and again, this is one of those bags that only costs $150,000, so no discount for you. So what you do get is you get to unlock a VIP concierge service. Okay? Here what we're seeing is an incorporation of being able to utilize frictionless payments. So now we've actually evolved from using smartphones to be able to use smartwatch, and sometimes in some cases even sleeves to be able to transact. Matter of fact, there's a hospitality company that we're working with that's able to do this on campuses, and they're very excited. At the end of this transaction, they ask the consumers, how did you like that? And most people actually indicate they're very delighted. Here again, we can actually use our effective computing technology to be able to ascertain, without the explicit user indicating how they rate the service, to be able to say, oh, that was fantastic, it was easy, it's effortless. So whether we're talking about retail context, a hotel, or cruise ship, or airline, when it comes to customer service, one of the important aspects that we want to make sure is that it's real time. We don't want to be sending our customers a JD or survey on an annual basis in terms of, how is your service rating on a scale of 1 to 5. Rather, we think that there's a capability and ability to be able to actually do this right then and there, and be able to know with some measure of confidence that this person had a positive customer service experience or did not have a positive customer service experience. Okay. Now, overall, for most of the brands and marketeers, you guys are very much interested on your ROI on brand engagement, and that's very important. How are people being involved and being intimate and sharing that brand engagement with others? And here's an opportunity where you can actually start to use a combination of wearables, IoT, and environmental things to be able to actually gauge that return on brand engagement or experience. And then lastly, if they enjoyed it, they're going to then share it. And here, what you're seeing is an auto classification of emojis. So we're actually working with Kik and a few other smaller SMS platforms where we're actually looking to take their semantic text as well as the photo or video, be able to automatically classify and basically append an emoji, or for those of you that are not familiar with it, emoticons next to their message that then gets shared on social media. Okay. And then from a retargeting and a loyalty perspective, now you have somebody who's purchased and has had a interaction with your brand. Now you can have an opportunity to re-campaign or retarget them for maybe the next following collection in this case. And again, there's an opportunity to reinforce that brand as well as the loyalty aspect through some of these things that we're showing. So again, just to whet their appetite.
Thank you so much. So a question for the panel. You've heard a set of all the different types of data that are able to be collected and analyzed in real time. How does IBM approach, from a tools perspective, from merchandising, journey analytics, experience center, how do we approach this problem? How do we solve, making sense of all the data coming through to create engaging experiences? Lisa, do you want to take a crack at that?
I think when you ask anybody what they know about IBM, their first response is going to be something like Watson. We're just really well known for how we analyze data, and we do it better than, I'd say, arguably anybody else. And that is what you're going to see a lot more of, because everything, any IoT device, wearable, is going to generate a out what people are doing inside your venue. So we use technologies like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth beacons to understand movement and how people move about inside your store and how they engage with your products. You can know a lot about an individual, whether they're a focused buyer, meaning they go directly to a certain area of the store, they buy the thing that they want and then they head home, or if they're a wanderer or a browser and they like to zigzag through the aisles. And all that stuff is really interesting for marketers because you can target those individual people and you know what to show them and what not to show them that will keep them engaged with your business. So that's one big thing that IBM is working on. We're integrating it with our like Silver Pop Engage in order to make it meaningful for marketers and be able to take those in-user actions and transition it to something that's meaningful for the people.
And Tim, it sounds like there's an implication for content personalization in commerce. So this Internet of Things data that can actually develop personalized offers within the commerce experience. What is your position in terms of the integration of all this disparate data and how we're looking at presenting content that's meaningful or offers that are meaningful?
So it's not easy. The challenge that anytime you're dealing with a lot of data is trying to reason from it and to actually deduce intent and useful information from that. And in many ways, that's made even harder when you're thinking about the Internet of Things, where potentially you're getting data from diverse sources. There's some very non-trivial challenges that I think we're working in conjunction with research across IBM that I think we're making some progress on, but I don't think are solved problems yet by any stretch of the imagination in terms of correlating the different pieces of data and the different sources of data against individuals or against actions. And so it's relatively easy to get a stream of here are the people who walked in my store and here's the emotions that they've got, and by the way, here are the actions that people have taken on the website. Trying to link all those different pieces together and know that it was actually Scott who was on the website last night and now he walked into the store and boy, now he's smiling. That becomes a much tougher activity. Now, clearly, once you can get that, that's the goal.
So you're bridging the physical world with the virtual world in terms of presentation of offers?
I think that's a lot of what Internet of Things enables, is by having a much broader set of data that spans different domains and different areas. You're bringing an awareness of what's happening in the world. And the things are really just that, those things to collect the data that you can then start to take advantage of the different domains.
So it sounds like there's an incredible amount of opportunity to take advantage of these data. Where does somebody start? Is there an early use case where we can take advantage of maybe beacons first, or where does someone start to take advantage of this new?
So I think it's very easy to talk about Internet of Things as very human related, and because most of us being humans, we think of the sorts of interaction patterns that we would have. But we in fact heard an instance this morning that Marks and Spencer are using RFID on goods and services. So facilitating information in a variety of different forms is absolutely something you can start to then take advantage of. One of my favorite examples, less retail related, is an oil company is actually annotating clams and then sprinkle them around oil wells in the Gulf, because they've noticed that when the clams close, it's an early indication at a finer sensitivity than any of the best equipment that humans can measure that there's some leakage that's going on. So you can start to get some really interesting data. And so again, the Marks and Spencer one is a fantastic example of something that you can absolutely do today. And that doesn't necessarily require you to go and solve all of those really hard problems in terms of linking the different sources of data, because if it's an RFID tag, if it's a shipping container, if it's something that is perhaps working with a store associate that you've got control over, you can start to track those sources of data and do really interesting and useful things with that. At the same time, starting to work in parallel with some of the more interesting and further out.
So Britta, you're very active in the home IoT space. Can you tell us a bit about the impact of home, the connected home in IoT and commerce in general?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, it's not a theory anymore. Since Samsung decided to announce that 90% of their products are going to be connected by the end of 2017, we know that connected home, connected devices, will be everywhere around us within the next 12, 24 months. So it's a good time to think how we can use this opportunity to build relations with customers, with end users. And since we've been working with manufacturers from Europe, from Asia, from States, I can tell you one thing. IoT is the biggest change in this industry. It's a real revolution because for the first time in history, manufacturers will have direct access to end users, to consumers, to their customers. They will know everything about them. They will know where their customers live. They will know everything about their habits, patterns. They will know how their customers use their products. So it's an amazing opportunity to use such data. And because collecting data is just a first step. In the long run, the biggest challenge is to monetize it, is to try to upsell, to cross-sell. And all of them, all of those manufacturers we work for, they want to make a step from being a manufacturer of a coffee machine to being a provider of coffee itself, from being a manufacturer of an electric kettle to being a provider of tea. So they see all those opportunities. They are trying to join to this revolution. And in the long run, they know one thing, that they need to shift their business models. They know that they should make a step from a hardware-oriented business to software-oriented business. Because in the long run, in the Internet of Things, it's not about things, it's about software, it's about data. This is the biggest challenge, how to use such data wisely, how to deal with the privacy, because these days it's a really important topic. And there are different approaches. At the moment, we can observe a huge fragmentation on the market. Because if you're at tech, let's imagine that you're at tech geeks, and you've got all those connected products like Nest thermostat, like August lock, or smart light bulb. You need a lot of different apps to start your day. One app to open your doors, the other one to change, to turn on lights, and the third one to change the temperature. It doesn't make a sense. So in the long run, we'll observe consolidation in the market. But meantime, all those companies are looking for new features, for new ways to engage customers, to build direct relations. And on the other hand, distributors know that they will have problems, because for the first time in history, manufacturers will be able to sell their products directly to end users, to consumers.
So Rebecca, let me interrupt you there for a minute. Do you see a vision where, as a homeowner, and my kitchen is smart, it's a smart kitchen, it knows exactly my food levels in my refrigerator. Do you see a world where I never have to shop at a supermarket again?
A little bit afraid of such world.
Okay.
But yes, really soon you'll see a lot of different smart products. And at the end of the day, your home will be smart. You'll be able to buy a milk with a tiny Bluetooth tag.
So I'll never run out of milk again, is that what you're telling me?
I think so. I think so.
Very good. So let's talk a bit about some of the engagement factors between the manufacturer. I think you brought up a very compelling topic. How does the monetization happen with a connected device? What are some of the ways that manufacturers can actually capitalize on this relationship? Because it sounds like you're benefiting the retailer and not necessarily benefiting the manufacturer. And can you clarify that a bit, Scott, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to address that. So tomorrow when I speak on open source, one of the topics I'm going to be talking about is the ability to monetize off some of this IoT data. So there's a open source project called RabbitMQ that allows for essentially this middleware messaging type of protocol based on AMQP. In particular, there is a company called Caramel IoT that actually has put in a monetization module within its platform. So let's just take the example of rental car fleets, or maybe even Caterpillar types of large machines. The typical pricing model is it's based on a per use or per lease type of basis. So what if we can actually start to quantify the RPM, meaning the rotation of the engine, or you can quantify the braking, or the kinds of dirt, or the number of times the front motor was picked up. What they're doing is that you're starting to recognize that not all of us use machines or equipment the same way. And we're actually charging based on the utility or the harshness. So in other words, this could potentially curve tractor racing and donuts, as an example. But seriously though, what it means is that IoT allows for you to have this level of granularity that you didn't have before. And customer A tends to break down your machine faster and wear it down than customer B. So you can't charge them in a unilateral fashion. You have to think about it in a segment based on usage. So that's kind of the immediate thing that I see. The other thing that I'm going to pass it over to my colleague here is around the demand-driven supply network, which has to do with the fact that, and I spoke on this at KAIST in Korea, which is their MIT, and around this notion that in the future, much like what we're seeing from an incremental evolution with Amazon's ability to be able to take a SKU of their inventory at home, well, things around your home are going to be equipped with BLE or other types of short-range radio frequency capabilities, with ability to gauge everything from temperature, vibration, to movement. So I met with the CEO of People Power, for instance, and he joked about putting a sensor on his cognac. So his teenager, doesn't drink it, and be notified via a smartphone that his cognac has been touched, as an example. But that's really where we're going. And what that means is that when it gets to a certain point of threshold from a consumption usage, let's say a gallon of milk, for instance, that actually sends a signal real time to the manufacturing plant. Or maybe it's a bleach and sends it to Clorox, as an example. So not only does it do tremendous things from an inventory and sales velocity, but it also does tremendous things for your planning and forecasting models as well. And that creates huge efficiencies. And I'll pass it over to you.
Any follow-up for Nick tonight?
Just one example. It's not a common knowledge, but manufacturers can earn twice more manufacturers of coffee machines can earn twice more on declassification kits than on coffee machines itself. So if we can help them to convince people to buy original declassification kits, it's enough to convince manufacturers to turn their products into connected ones. Why? Because they can earn twice more on such kits every year, instead of having one-time income when they sell a coffee machine. So thanks to such simple things, like convincing people to use original spare parts or related products, we can help manufacturers to build new streams of revenues. And it's just one example. There are others. It's not very complicated, and we can use it right now because we've got everything. We've got connected devices on the market. It's up to us how we use such data, and we don't need to think about really complicated things. There are so many simple use cases where we can use data to get new revenues.
So I think that's all true. But you've got to think, and Michael's question in terms of how do you monetize it, it's got to be seen by the consumer to have value to them. And so you're emphatically right. This is a great source of revenue for the manufacturers. But at the end of the day, the challenge that we all have, and this applies in terms of new devices and in terms of concepts such as just privacy and willingness of consumers to share data, they've got to see value.
Sure.
And so I think one of the things that as all of us are looking at, how do you take advantage of this IoT phenomenon that's coming along, is to not fall into the trap of how can I make money. It's to rather think about, okay, well, how am I going to provide something that the consumer is going to see some value from,
I totally agree.
and then the money's going to fall from there.
So let's imagine a coffee machine shouting to you, do you want to extend your warranty for next couple of years? You can do it for free if you subscribe for original declassification kits.
Right.
So we're always focused on consumers because they're the most important part.
And apparently there's a market for fridges that order milk from people. So.
I totally need that. So we touched a bit on the privacy work.
Yeah.
And privacy is clearly a concern of consumers. There's a lot of talk about sharing data, the usage of data, the encryption of data amongst devices, mobile phones, etc. So Tim, you've been out here for a long time. You've seen these trends come and go. And you see trends take off like a rocket ship. Can you tell us a bit about how privacy and the impact to the end user is with IoT?
Yeah, I mean, it's critical, and it's a flavor of that same conversation. I mean, if you don't make something acceptable to people, and so we've got a fair amount of data that within IBM we host already. And some of it is extremely sensitive data, both at a consumer level and a corporate level. We've got a number of SaaS products that exist in our portfolio today that have got a lot of sensitive data in that. And so as IBM, we take data security and data privacy extremely seriously. From a consumer perspective, we absolutely have the position that the consumer's data is or the owner of the data, whether that is a consumer or a business, is the owner of that data and should have the ability to control and to manage the disposition of that data. But I think there's at a simple level, it's a fairly black or white answer, right? And clearly there's more detail to enable that, but I think it has to be that simple. I think you've got to be very careful though, getting overly hung up on the letter of the law, and when it comes to things like regulatory issues and sort of privacy in terms of what you're allowed to do, because it's absolutely possible today, and forget the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is going to accelerate it, but just thinking about things like websites and data that we've got today, to track data, to track consumer behavior, and to do so completely and emphatically within the realm of the law, do everything legal, everything private, and still totally freak people out. And that's not really going to be in any of our best interest to encourage the adoption of this sort of new data.
Do you think that the Internet of Things, though, this enforces us to go beyond the law in terms of openness and what we're going to do with the data?
So I think these will come back to the same. I think it's about providing value to the consumer, and I think the corollary is it's about not really freaking people out. My anecdotal rule of thumb that so far seems to be holding is you freak people out when you violate their assumed anonymity. And I say assumed anonymity because we all actually know there's lots of ways that sort of tracking us, but there's things that we like to do that we feel that we're anonymous about, right? I like to feel when I'm walking down the street or going in a store that I'm anonymous. And it's when something confronts me in my face and goes, oh my God, I'm not anonymous. They actually know. The government, the retailer, the manufacturer, they know what I'm doing. That's when it freaks people out. And I don't think that's a regulatory issue. And it's not specifically a privacy issue, although clearly privacy is important. It's about making sure that you're using and leveraging the data in a way that doesn't concern people or upset them. And if we don't do that, there'll be a huge pushback on this. If we do this, it comes back to the question of monetization again. There's a huge upside and opportunity in terms of providing a better service for customers.
So it sounds like, and maybe Lisa, this is a question for you, that over the past 5 years, we've sort of primed the consumer to share more data. With a mobile device, with an application, you begin to say, I'm gonna opt in for push, I'm gonna opt in for geolocation tracking, beacon tracking. You know, in your work with mobile first, what are you seeing in terms of adoption, in terms of how to best implement some of that visibility in what you're collecting?
Yeah, I think that you said the key word there is opt-in, and we have to make it very clear to people that it's their decision and their choice whether or not they want to share the information that they have. There's a lot of really cool things for developers out there today where you can go in and play with APIs, and like I love if this then that, being able to say, I give permission through OAuth that you can have access to all my Fitbit data, but only if it's going to add some value to me. So if something happens, then I want it to notify me in some way. And I think if you have those value adds, we've all kind of talked about it, and giving something back to the end user for the reasoning for opting in and making it compelling for them to share their information, that's where it'll be better.
Scott Rebecca, what are your opinions on privacy in your work?
All right, so I recently had a couple of sessions with Forrester and have a follow-up with them. And also I've been speaking with Google and Yahoo regarding this very topic. And generally, I think our consensus is that there's a number of things that are best practices that are, from a guidance perspective, whether you're part of DAA or NAI, for instance, around data minimization, privacy by design, which should be a vernacular that should be familiar to most of you, and it should be. Personal identity and data management and personal data vaults, and privacy policies and disclosures around best practices there. One of the key things that came out, I think, is around this notion of privacy data. So more and more we're starting to see more inquiries and cases that's being raised by FTC. And pretty soon there's going to be a bit of an enforcement for especially data brokers to actually bail some of the data that gets collected. And certainly from ambient computing and IoT, there's going to be a lot more facets of data that's being collected. So for those of you, it would be advantageous, a comparative advantage, to actually lead with privacy first. And matter of fact, our solution, we're actually creating a data privacy vault for the consumers to be able to access. And it's not simply an opt-in or opt-out type of mechanism. It needs to be granular to give them sufficient amount of choices around the type of the data types, the metadata, when they can turn it off, when they can turn it back on, to whom they share it with. And that's the kind of information that they need. In addition to that, disclosures, you have the Facebook, the LinkedIns, and others that are migrating to more of a simplified icon-based approach with a few simple type of disclosures. And it's a layered approach where you start fairly simple, graphical, and then as they're interested, they continue to click and drill down until all the full legalese is available. And that's an important piece to make sure that it's palatable and it's accessible. And one of the things that we do, and certainly with our entity, is to make sure that either at the advisory level or at the CXO level, to secure a chief privacy officer. And I think that's an important piece because it communicates to the marketplace and your customers that you're serious about privacy. And privacy by design and ephemeral messaging, if you're familiar with it, know that it's not simple, it's not easy to implement, especially for older companies that have lots of processes and data are trapped between test data, production data, and so forth, right? So getting it at the design stage is incredibly important, and that's where design by privacy by design is so critical. So I'll leave it there.
That's good. I just want to roll back to one point you made, Scott. Are you saying that it's up to marketers? Because at the moment you sign up for a website, and most of us don't read the privacy policy or terms of use. Are you saying that you want to make that more open to say, I'm going to publish exactly, or I'm a user, I'm going to be able to query a pool to see what data that this brand is collecting on me? Is that the extent in which we need to approach privacy first? What's the implementation?
It's voluntarily at this point, but I think there's a general consensus at the industry level that we're going to see more of that pressure coming from a legislative perspective, FTC and others. So for companies that are willing to take the lead instead of being reactive, and I can tell you that the IoT phenomenon that you're seeing is leading first and foremost with features and capabilities, and privacy and security secondary. Though I'm part of All-Sing Alliance and we take security very seriously, it's enforcement. So you don't want to be in a position where this blows up and becomes a huge liability.
And Rebecca, data collected in the home seems to be a very sensitive topic. I mean, I know with mass invest and protect in these things that send data to the cloud, what are some of the barriers that you're seeing in your world to connecting more devices in the home, or are there barriers?
Yeah. So first of all, we lost our privacy years ago. MasterCard, Visa, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, all of them.
Mobile phones.
Yeah, exactly. All of them gather data. They know a lot about us. But there is one rule. It's not about legal matters. It's about values, features you can provide to end users. If you can provide useful features, if you can give significant benefits to end users, they will let you to gather data. They will let you to invite their privacy, like in case of Facebook. Or we know that they gather data, that they know a lot about us, but we still use Facebook to connect with the world. The same with Google. We know that we can't Google for free because we pay with our privacy, but we still do it because Google is the best tool to search things in the internet.
That's an excellent point. I mean, if you have consumers' trust and you don't violate that trust, and you are providing them a service, I think we are seeing anecdotally, and we've actually run surveys. People are prepared to share data. You just need to make sure that you are entering into a contract, not necessarily a legal formal contract, but you're entering into an implicit contract with them. And if you're providing them value, then they're prepared to they'll see the value coming back from that. I actually think that's also it's a generational thing as well. My parents would be freaked out if they knew that the store knew that they'd walked into the store. I wouldn't be freaked out, but it made me surprised by it. And my kids are going to be shocked if they go into a store and they don't get a personalized experience. That trend is just going to continue, and it's what people are expecting, and it's what organizations such as the fine folk in the room here are able to provide in terms of service, right? If you can provide a fantastic service, and I don't end up with my data being used in ways that I don't want, then I'm going to do more of it. And if we violate that, then they'll.
I wanted to bring the conversation back to marketing and advertising a little bit. I had a chance to speak with the CTO, the global CTO at Razorfish, and a VP there. And it was interesting when we explained to them what we're doing, and they realized that, one of the comments that they made is, even though they're a publicly traded entity that specializes in advertising, they hate the word advertising. And I think what they saw from a glimmer was that what IoT and wearables bring is this opportunity for something that I keep on using, which is called ambient computing. Where is this headed? Whether we're talking about gimbal beacons, or whether we're talking about any other environmental things, or wearables, quantify self, what we're really getting at is that the computer, the thing that's in front of you, in front of me, is being literally scattered, literally in the form of nanoparticles that's into the wall, embedded into the wall, the floor, the chairs, the cloth, the clothes that you wear. What it means is that you, the object, the central figure, construct, as you move from your home to your car, to work, to public spaces, the system knows you, understands your context, where you're going, what you want, anticipates your needs, and understands the stimuli, which is an important piece in marketing, because you need to know, were they smiling because they got a great text message from a friend, or are they smiling because they really like your product and service? Where this is going is this notion of this ambient, omnipresent, virtual assistant. That's where this is really going. And again, it may sound freaky, but it's really not, because you get to control it. And if you wanted to, you can make it fully offline. Matter of fact, Stanford researcher has something called Omelette that allows you to really flip the model around who owns data. Is it the proprietary providers like Dropbox and Google, or is it you? And certainly providers like himself are providing the capability to have a private cloud right in your premise, in your home. So there's a lot of interesting things, but that's where it's going. It's this notion of ambient computing that knows what you want and anticipates it. So for example, I live in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco area. I love San Diego, but I haven't been here in a while. But if I'm not that familiar and I want to go out for dinner, for instance, we my assistant do that, my virtual assistant. But we're starting to see a little glimmers of this, whether it's XAI, which is for scheduling using via email, or Easily Do Assistant app, which some of you are probably using already, and certainly CRM, Salesforce.com, and their acquisitions with Relate IQ. All of these things, we're starting to see more utilization of artificial intelligence, deep learning, neural networks, to be able to understand what you're doing and be able to be one step ahead of you.
Do you see a vision where marketers are even involved at all?
It should be, absolutely, absolutely. Because what you're doing is you're changing the paradigm from a unilateral approach, from you targeting them to they saying, I need this information. I'm going to get on a flight. I'm going to Barcelona. I know nothing about Barcelona. Help me. Help me to find an Uber service or equivalent. Help me to find a restaurant, or help me to find something to do, or help me to connect with my friends using connect.com. All of these things, administrative things that blogs are vague, do it automatically for me.
Wonderful. So actually, we are closing in on the end of this session, so I want to give a chance for everyone to kind of summarize their thoughts. I think, Scott, that was a great summary. Radek, would you like any closing comments about where the future lies, how quickly people need to adapt to IoT?
Yeah, it's a good summary. There's no time. We should start just right now because all of those devices, connected devices, are coming. They will be on the market very soon. So you should prepare to use data you can get through them wisely to provide benefits to end users.
Yeah, I think we all kind of summarized it already, but the future is now. The devices are here today. We just need to start integrating it with all of our products.
I think you've got years to start. No, I mean, clearly, yes, I agree. The data is coming now. I think, I said this in my opening comment, there are things that you can start to take advantage of now that don't start to run into the same sets of privacy concerns or complexity. And so when you start to think about tracking things, I mean, we call it an Internet of Things, you start thinking about tracking things, management of your supply chain, better understanding of the location of goods, whether that's goods in the supply chain or just goods in the store, and how do you make efficiencies through that. You know what? Those things don't have privacy concerns. And so it starts to allow you to start the journey, start to figure out how to take advantage of the additional streams of information, provide better value to customers, and then you can start to go, there's another whole class of people who absolutely have privacy concerns, but of a different level, and those are employees. And so you can start to help track, for example, the location of an employee, not for enforcement purposes, but so that when someone says, I'd like to get help, you've got a better understanding of perhaps which employees at which location in the store, so you can send the right person to help the right person, the right customer. You could easily extend this out to whether we're talking about management in warehouses or through supply chains. And employees, as I said, have an expectation of privacy, but it's different. So again, you're another step down the road. You're starting to take advantage of all of these additional sources of data, the additional interaction patterns that you can provide. At the end of the day, you are hopefully providing better service for customers and improving the efficiency within which your organization is running. And yet, to do all of those things, you haven't yet had to really confront some of the really hard problems in terms of privacy, the freakiness aspect of, oh my God, someone's collecting data on me. That does not mean that you should not be thinking about those things. You should absolutely be trying to work through and understand, if I have access to this amount of data, can I collect additional data from people? Start to work through that out, because it's going to take a while to work it out. But don't think you have to solve all of those problems just in order to start taking advantage of the broader stream of data that's going to be available, or in fact basically is available now.
Fantastic. So for the last couple of minutes, I'd like to turn it over to the audience for any questions we have to our panel. Please.
Hi, Sean Harris with C Technology, something that makes a lot of tracking possible in the world. What's number 3 in your list? So you said things, associates, customer tags?
So the question was, what's number 3 on my list? Thank you for putting me on the spot, by the way, it's great. So things seem obvious. Employees, so associates, employees in general, you know, I mean, I think I'm running out of alternatives other than just customers, but I mean, at least I made the point, it's got to be customers through opt-in. And so, you know, at some point, if you have asked someone for you know, obvious permission to gather their data, you will concern them less. You have, I don't even want to say legal access, because again, I don't want to get hung up on the legal aspect of privacy, because I think that's a slippery slope, because you know, you've got to be several levels above what is legal. But if you've asked them and you've opted in and they've given you permission, then they're not going to be so frightened or surprised when you come back with recommendations based on that. Now, there are absolutely other things where, you know, the opt-in may be less visible to people, and you are still going to be bound by not only the legal privacy aspect, but that then becomes tougher to, you know, how do I provide value to you if you didn't even know that you'd opted in, or how do I go manage that? So to me, that's the tougher problem. You know, a closer to, you know, to home, easier to implement solution is working with data that people know they're visibly sharing with you, and then it becomes less of an issue. I don't know if you guys want to add more?
One more thing, environment sensors.
Yeah.
So the powerful sensors, if you put sensors all around the city, in most cases, there will be no problem with privacy because you monitor an environment. And it's really valuable in many different places all around the world. It's extremely important to know different things about temperature, humidity, soil humidity, etc.
That's a fantastic